Are you going to ask us questions? Do I need to
Okay, everybody, good evening and welcome to another amazing episode of SETI Live. And I'm Bill Diamond, the CEO of the SETI Institute, talking to you live from California near the San Francisco area. Our headquarters is in Mountain View, California. And we're going to be talking tonight to Dr. Pascal Lee and some of his colleagues in at the largest uninhabited Earth. Let's try that again. Who are on the largest uninhabited island on planet Earth, which is Devon Island in the Canadian high Arctic at about 75 degrees north latitude, less than 1,000 miles from the North Pole. So, we like to take you on journeys when we do these SETI lives. We take you on science journeys and have you learn about the kind of science we do that might involve Mars or the planets elsewhere in the solar system, or exoplanets beyond our own solar system, or galaxies beyond our own galaxy. But those are usually virtual journeys where we're showing you images and videos or graphics. And today we're taking you on a real journey to an actual place, but pretty far away from where I am. And thanks to the technology of Starlink, which is one of these mixed bag kinds of things that on the one hand is a concern to astronomers and people in astronomical sciences, because it's more stuff up in space that we have to deal with to do our science. But at the same time, it's enabling some incredible capabilities. It enables, for example, Pascal and his team, who are on an extremely remote location, to actually be with us live tonight from Devon Island. So let's start with a big hello from Pascal and the team up at Devon Island. Pascal, how are you doing?
Hi, Bill. It's good to hear you and see you.
And see you.
We are at camp. This is the annual summer field campaign of the Hutton Mars project, which is supported by NASA, but also by private partners, industry. We are here in our comms tent. And so I'm just going to show you around quickly, and then I'll switch over to my phone to do a walkthrough camp. But here you have in our office tent, Matt Jones, who is our deputy expedition lead and also chief field engineer. Matt, you want to say something?
Hi, everybody. Glad you could join it.
Matt is super modest, but he works in quantum computing as a day job. And he's here to help us as a camp manager and chief field engineer.
Shout out to IonQ.
We're very happy to have him. Next to Matt is Saban Dalal, Dr. Saban Dalal. He's our chief field safety officer. He's actually a medical doctor. He just graduated, this year? And practicing medicine, doing a residency, I think, at the University of Washington, right?
Yep.
Anyway, Saban is going through his third field season with the Hutton Mars project. Matt is in his second field season. And so these two are the key pillars who are helping me run this project here as safely as possible every summer.
Well, it's great to see you both. And Saban, it's, pretty amazing that you can now say you not only are doing your residency at Washington, but you're doing your residency at the Hutton Mars project on Devon Island. So not many doctors will be able to say that.
Oh, yeah, it's been really great. I'm training in emergency medicine, and so this is really awesome to be a part of because I get to do a lot of field work and do what's called austere medicine, be practicing in extreme environments, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's very cool. Well, we certainly don't want you to have anything to practice on while you're up there, but it's good to know you're there.
Yeah. Saban's expertise is emergency medicine, which is exactly the type of medicine we need up here, and he's also training to become a full, and he has already actually supported space crews, including the Inspiration 4 crew that flew on SpaceX a few months ago. So back here, we have Mathieu Gagnon, who is a student at École de Technologie Supérieure in Montreal. He's an electrical engineer, but an outstanding student. In fact, he's the Hutton Mars Project Apollo Fellow for this summer. We have an outstanding student or recent graduate that we select each year as our Apollo Fellow. So Matt's the fellow. Mathieu is the fellow. So Mathieu is here to help us design a a Mars ATV. We often think of rovers on the moon or Mars as two-seaters, but one of the lessons learned from the Hutton Mars project is that if you're going to be on a planetary surface for long term, you probably want to have something like an individual ATV as your primary means of moving around, and it gives you a lot more flexibility operationally than having to split a vehicle every time. So Matt is working on that, and he'll also be doing some rocket testing. You want to talk about your rocket club?
Yeah, so I'm part of a student sounding rocketry club, as well as just amateur rocketry in general. So I have a lot of experience with solid rocket motors, and so we're doing a test on ice-rich regolith up here, and seeing the effects of rocket plume motors on basically on the soil terrain up here. So yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah. The concern here is when you land on terrain that is rich in ice, you might actually vaporize some of the ice or melt it, and that's not good for your rocket essentially and its stability once it's landed. So we're looking into that issue here. Next to me we have Sophie English. She was an RU intern actually at the SETI Institute last summer. And
Right. Hi, Sophie.
Hi, good to see you guys again.
Good to see
So
you.
Sophie is at Texas A&M as an aerospace engineer. She is working with me on traverse planning for the moon in particular. Hutton crater, as it turns out, is almost exactly the same size as Shackleton crater at the south pole of the moon. And so we're simulating a traverse that would go from one of NASA's proposed landing regions for the Artemis program to the South Pole itself and Shackleton crater. So it's a 20-kilometer traverse, and Sophie and I are going to be implementing that a couple days from now with another researcher from Marshall Space Flight Center,
Yes.
Evan Anzalone.
Yes.
Excellent. Exciting.
And then here we have one of our industry partners of every year, Collins Aerospace.
Hello, everyone.
Two spacesuit engineers who are up here.
In Devon Island. My name is Sid, and
I'm Tom Chase.
so this is our second suit prototype. And we have a new one right here, which is supposed to be a planetary suit as well. And this is our very first prototype. So the prototypes have evolved over the years, and we always come here at Devon to practice suit walks and new technologies because this is such a realistic simulated environment for Moon and Mars. So
And for the audience, let them know about Colin's history with NASA in terms of spacesuits.
there have been all the lunar Apollo spacesuits and all the EMUs that we have seen on ISS have been manufactured by Collins Aerospace till date.
So our backpacks are still on the moon. They were some of the last things to be kicked out of the lunar excursion modules so that we could bring back more rocks and keep Pascal happy. And we also were the prime contractor and still are for the EMU, the extravehicular mobility unit that first flew on shuttle back in the early 80s and continues to fly and serve the country on the International Space Station.
Excellent. So, and you have, as I know, but the audience doesn't necessarily know, a long history, as you mentioned, of studying spacesuit design, astronaut mobility in spacesuits, things of that sort, life support systems at the Hutton Mars project at Devon Island.
We've been here for since 2000. We first had an excursion here, and I've been lucky to be up here. This is my fourth trip. So 2006, 2008, 2017, and now in 2023, and passing the torch to Sid here so that she can learn the ropes and feel how much fun it is to be productive up here in a realistic environment.
That's great. That's excellent. Well,
Yeah,
you both again.
Yeah, Bill, these are amazing engineers to have an opportunity to work with. And, a spacesuit, we often think of that as just clothing, but what it really is a wearable spacecraft.
Yes.
And in that sense, a spacesuit is where everything has to come together in aerospace engineering. Life support, comms, computing, navigation,
Sample collection.
sample collection, radiation protection, micrometeorite. I mean, it's
a
it's
long list.
wearable spacecraft.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
just want to show you guys, you Bill, especially the logos on Tom's chest. I think you're coming up. Yep. See that?
Oh yes, love it. Excellent. That's great.
And even SETI is, of course, in our logo.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, it's pretty cool to have the SETI logo and the Collins Aerospace logo on the same spacesuit. So that's wonderful, and we've been delighted with this partnership over the years for sure.
Yeah,
It's been awesome.
Collins is actually currently a contractor from NASA for future spacesuit systems for Station, possibly Gateway, Artemis program on the moon, along with Axiom Aerospace, Axiom, which is another contractor that is involved in spacesuit for NASA this time around. So it's there's a lot happening, is all I can say.
So Pascal, I'm going to pause here for a second. I've got a globe behind me. I just want to give everybody a sense of exactly where you are on this physical globe, and then what would be fun would be for you to talk about the Hutton Mars project. Why is it called the Mars Project? And talk about HMP and the environment you're in as a Mars analog, and why this is so useful from a science point of view. But here's a map of the world, right, or a globe actually. And for those of you in doubt, it is not a flat Earth. It turns out we've pretty well established that. So here's North America, and we're out here in California in the Bay Area. And if we tip it up towards the North Pole, and we go very close to the North Pole, and let me get this oriented the proper way here. And Devon Island is like way up here at the tip of my finger. So, at 75 degrees north latitude. So, 15 degrees from the North Pole. And we're down here at, 36, 37 degrees in California. So that's right there where you're seeing Devon Island near the very top of the Earth is where Pascal and the team are right now as we speak. So pretty amazing. And you'll notice also in the background behind Pascal looking out the windows, and I guess we're going to go outside in a minute, it's light out, even though it's 9:45 at night there, because up these latitudes at this time of year, it's kind of land of the midnight sun. So it doesn't get dark. And I guess you're not still right at the point of it, the sun going below the horizon, or is it just starting?
Yeah, no, the sun is just starting to dip below the higher points on the horizon.
Okay.
But it's still, we have daylight, scattered light from the sun throughout the night still. And you were mentioning the polar regions. I just wanted to point out that I travel up here every summer with my loyal dog, Apollo, middle name Program. And he is zonked out here, but he protects our camp from polar bears in particular. I mean, we think that he would bark as he does to any other animal that he sees. He's
as long as he's awake.
Yeah, that's it. But you can see he's not on threat condition alpha here. He's
now I think he's on code green right now.
He's on code green. So I'm going to switch over to my iPhone.
All right.
And step outside and show you around real quick.
Okay. While Pascal steps outside, I'll just tell you all that this is the first time we've actually been able to have live video communications with Pascal and the team up at Devon Island. They every year they go up there. We can only communicate usually by text. I think thanks to some SATCOM's capabilities, we've had limited ability to have a phone call or text in the past, but to have the opportunity to have a live video feed is really quite cool. And again, that's thanks to the Starlink capability. So here he is outside, and you can see it looks like it's kind of a gray, overcast night there, but still obviously very light.
Yeah, it's 9:45 p.m. We're on Central Time, Houston time, which is quite convenient. The sun is not going to set, although, like you said, it's overcast tonight. So we just stepped outside of what was our office tent, the main headquarters, if you will, of our project here on Devon. And across the street from us, I just did a 180, is the comms where we have
another team that is that's also part of our project. It's a NASA Ames team led by Brian Glass, and they are doing drilling in support of the Viper mission. The Viper is a robotic rover that's about to be sent by NASA to the moon and to the polar regions. It will be looking for ice in the underground of the moon, the shallow underground. And one of the things that it will take with it is a drill that will probe the subsurface of the moon in search for ice. So it's a very important milestone of testing that instrument before its flight to the moon that's taking place here. Back in the distance, you have our greenhouse. Maybe I think you can see that. It's a nice Lexan greenhouse. We use it also for storage in the winter. But this is a greenhouse that supported the first ever robotic year-round growth of plants in the Arctic or in the polar regions on Earth. It was entirely automated. It was an experiment run by the Canadian Space Agency and the University of Guelph. And we left the summer with some trays with seeds. When we came back next summer, there were lettuce and other goodies that we could harvest in our greenhouse with no human presence throughout the winter.
So the watering was automated and all the care, and that's amazing.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
As I walk around, you see our Humvee. This is one of our two Humvees. This one is called the Ocarian, or the Moon one. It got here by us doing this going on an epic journey by driving it on the Northwest Passage in the winter while the sea ice is frozen.
By the way, everybody, that journey was captured in a documentary film called Passage to Mars, and it was narrated by none other than Zachary Quinto, who plays the young Mr. Spock in Star Trek. And so it's got quite a history. And if you get a chance, find that documentary. It's on some of the live streaming platforms that are out there, and it's extraordinary. And I remember when we had a screening of it at the Institute a few years back after it was first released, and I said to Pascal during it that I was glad he was with us in the room, because as I was watching the film, I wasn't sure if the team would make it out alive. So it was really extraordinary and an amazing scenery and journey. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I mean, it was both epic and also a very bad idea. But
we didn't want to hear that part.
Okay. What you hear humming in the distance over there is our generator. It's behind the ATVs. And in the distance, that beautiful rock, we call that the fortress. The camp is actually sitting on an ancient coral reef from the Ordovician period of the Earth. So we're talking about 435 million years ago. We were actually in the tropics in this location, in shallow seas. And this was the very early beginnings of reefs on Earth with coral. The earliest reefs on Earth were not made of coral. They were made of cyanobacteria, very primitive algal mats, and that essentially grew layer by layer into thick reefs. And eventually corals came about and took over the reef ecology. And today on modern Earth, the largest majority, of course, of reefs are coral reefs. But on Devon here, you can stroll around at the surface of our camp here and pick up some rocks that are essentially corals from 435 million years ago. Yeah, and I'll show you a little piece here in a second, but that's what the fortress is. It's a remnant of a reef. Imagine that thing, floating in the middle of the sea. And in the distance, the flat surface over there is our airstrip. So the airstrip is about half a kilometer away from our camp. We have otherwise our fleet of all-terrain vehicles, ATVs. We have quite a few here. ATVs are more than just vehicles for us. They are really part of our tool of scientific instruments. Very much like when you have a microscope, it can take you closer to the minerals of the rock that you're examining. ATVs take you to the outcrops, to the larger scale rock formations that you want to explore. And so in a profound sense, they're more than just a means of locomotion. They are scientific instruments for us, and we treasure them. they're actually getting quite old, and we're thinking of replacing these gasoline powered ATVs by electric ones to be more consistent with how we will and Mars in the future.
Right.
As we look around, well, let me show you an example of a coral reef. I'm pretty sure we'll stay within network here, but I'm just walking. Over there in the distance is our latrine tent, so you have the benefit of some privacy and some distance. But you're also exposed a little bit to a surprise attack by a polar bear if you're sort of out there. So people are encouraged to not spend too long in there with their pants down. And here we have well, I thought we had some corals here, but let me see. Okay, well, sure enough, I can't find it anymore. Looks like somebody might have picked it up. Okay, but anyway, this is oh, there he is. There you go. Look at this.
Oh yeah. Unbelievable.
That's a brain coral from the Ordovician.
It's
So
amazing.
down,
You certainly wouldn't expect to see, a coral in an Arctic environment, in a sort of Arctic desert environment. It's really extraordinary.
exactly. And of course, the coral itself is not relevant to the moon or Mars, but it gives you a sense of how a landscape and a terrain can change over time. And geology is about that. It's about reading rocks like you would a book that tells a story about your planet. Down here we have our core, which is mostly a social area in our mess tent. So it's a octagonal building, and the idea was to have all our modules essentially radiate from this core and be connected to the core. You see there are 8 doors all around to the different modules. And what we want to do is connect the modules through ramps like this and have Lexan covering to warm up the whole base. It's still a project in progress. We need more funding, Bill, for this. But here's our little local rock collection with more coral. And let me take you to our mess hall, the inside of the core. Hello, everybody. This is our core. You have Dr. Brian Glass from NASA Ames.
Hey, Brian.
Hi there.
This is
Good
Bill
to see you.
from SETI Institute.
Hi, good to see you too.
So, Brian, why don't you tell everybody what you and your team are doing up here?
Well, my team and I are taking a Trident drill, which is the same drill. We have a sibling of those that are going on Prime 1 or Viper next year to the south regions of the moon. And we're testing it into fallback breccia, which is probably one of the better textural mechanical simulants in nature for what you would see in lunar regolith. And lo and behold, we are also going into permafrost. So we are replicating to the best of our ability the conditions and Mother Nature's unpredictability while we go and drill this stuff. So far it's going well. We've gone about cumulatively 4 meters, more or less, about 1.5 meters of that into icy regolith, and getting interesting data from one hole to the next. So that will all help us figure out if it's going to break and how.
Yep. So that I think also informs this notion of the HMP facility as an analog site. In this case, not just a Mars analog site, but a lunar analog site where you can actually, in more or less real conditions, test things like drills for future missions.
Right. And there are things we can do in an analog site that you can take a high fidelity lunar simulant, put it in a thermal vac chamber, add some trace to it and try to drill that. And it's still people cheat, even if it's unconsciously. Mother Nature does not.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what's amazing is that you actually have a location and a place where you can do sort of real world / real moon type of testing on this sort of hardware rather than simulating it in lab environments, which, are not going to be what you're going to encounter on the moon.
Right. I mean, lab tests are invaluable too, but it's really, you need both to
Right.
really be to have a confidence in taking a system out, especially a planetary surface system that you haven't tried before.
Yep. Yep. Well, so equally important, Brian, how's the food up there?
The food has been actually better than expected. You know, I usually get from home because of some past experiences, but actually it has been, you know, quite good. And haven't gotten sick and haven't been hungry yet. So
That's a double win.
This is the best restaurant on Devon Island. The best.
It's also
Yeah.
the only one, right? But we won't mention that.
Okay. Here are, thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
A few other colleagues.
We're enjoying the best restaurant.
Isabel and Carter are from Honeybee Robotics, the famed robotics company that is behind many robotic arms on rovers on Mars. But they are also the builders and designers of the drill that will be going to the moon on two upcoming missions. And then we have Dr. Charity Phillips-Lander here, who's with SWIRI.
Hi, how are you?
Great. Nice to see you. SWIRI is Southwest Research Institute, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, but a large and formidable research organization for sure, and with a lot of work, but not exclusively, but a lot of work in the space sciences. So great to see you.
So Charity is our collaborator this summer, looking into whatever is living in permafrost, in ground ice. And it might sound surprising, but there has not been that much published on life on Earth that lives in permanently frozen ground.
Yeah.
Because most people are interested in permafrost for other reasons, economic reasons, mechanical, geotechnical reasons. But the biology of permafrost is sort of an odd gap in our knowledge, and so Charity is filling that gap this summer.
Well, that's great. Well, the permafrost, of course, has been getting a lot of attention lately because of the thawing of the permafrost, where there's a lot of trapped methane, which is 100 times more potent a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. And so I'm wondering, I was actually going to ask this question, since you, Pascal, in particular, and some of your colleagues have been going to Hutton for, a couple of decades. Have you noticed changes in the permafrost or other environmental or climate-oriented changes as a result of, what we've seen more recently in terms of global scale planetary warming?
Yeah, in fact, Brian and our team have been discussing that just the other day, because Brian has firsthand measurement, essentially, of the depth of the permafrost over a time scale of 2 decades working up here. And the depth at which you encounter the frozen ground is indeed getting deeper and deeper, because the impact of the warmer climate at the surface is being felt deeper into the ground each year. Yeah. Brian, you might add something to that?
Yes, actually, one of the side benefits of drilling into it is you get an idea of where the softer active layer and then where the ice boundary is on a year-by-year basis. Same location, same time of year, so you actually have a reasonable control on this. And it has gone from about 38 centimeters in, say, 2004 to the upper 40s, 50s by about the late 2000s. Out mid 50s by the teens, and now we're at 62.
Wow.
Before we hit the layer. So that has been over the course of about 20 years.
And that, as we know, I mean, obviously in geological time, that's nothing at all, but even in a human lifetime, that's not that much time. So things are happening fast. And it seems from what I understand that, the polar regions are about 4 to 10 times more sensitive in terms of
that's right.
Climate change on, the lower latitudes. So extraordinary.
It's true with glaciers and ice caps as well. Devon Island has a large ice cap on the eastern part of the island. It's actually a final remnant of the Inuitian ice sheet that used to cover the bulk of the high Arctic in North America during the last ice age and before. And the areas that are covered by this ice sheet are receding dramatically. We have air photos of Devon Island, which show plenty of places that are covered in ice. You go there now, there's no ice at all. There's no sign of it.
Yeah. No, it is kind of shocking and a bit scary. Actually, Carolyn wrote, "Trapped methane in the permafrost, scary!" Exclamation point. It's like, yes, that is true. It is scary if as it melts. But so Pascal, we're at about 30 minutes. It's now 10 p.m. your time, so I'm sure your team's getting a little tired.
Thank you,
Before
Tim.
we go to a couple of questions here, one thing I wanted to tell the audience is that if you go to Google Earth, not Google Maps, but Google Earth, and you type in Houghton Mars Project, Haughton, you'll actually it'll locate the team's base on the island, and you can zoom in, and you'll actually see the core tent that Pascal just walked out of, and the surrounding tents that radiate out from it. It's really extraordinary. You'll also see that there's absolutely nothing else on the island in terms of any signs of man-made technology or human presence. So it really is an extraordinarily remote location. So you can check it out. And also a couple of years ago, we had a team from Google Earth actually up there with video equipment, and they did some video recordings, and you can now actually see Houghton or Devon Island on Street View, even though there's no streets. So it's pretty cool. You can check those things out. But Pascal, before we go to some audience questions, any other comments you want to mention, or things you want to mention before we do that, about what you're doing up there, or any other aspects of the expedition?
No, I'm just very grateful for the SETI Institute to have been very supportive of our work up here, and to all our partners in industry and academia. I wanted to show you, one final feature of our camp, which is our medical sick bay, we call that.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc is here. Hey, Bones, can you show us sick bay?
All right, come on in.
But all of this, takes support, and we are just very grateful to all those who see the future here. We're planning the human exploration of the moon and Mars and beyond. And I personally am not a big fan of colonization. I just want to put that out there. But on the other hand, I'm a big fan of exploration and scientific exploration. I think we should set up a base on the moon and on Mars, and really explore those places like we do the Arctic and Antarctica.
Yep.
And so anyway, here's our sick bay.
All right. Just
Beautiful.
a quick little tour. We have a couple of our housing quarters here. I sleep over here on the right. And Matt, part of our management team, sleeps over here on the left. We man the sick bay here. And so if you come in, it's pretty basic. We have a table here in the middle, which is where we put it to. And we have a kit here that includes everything we need to resuscitate a patient, from basic to some advanced life support measures, including AED. And then, I've got my little desk over here on the right, with some other additional tools, and that's really about it. Yeah.
And you see, you've got a little heater in the back behind you there.
Yeah.
Excellent. So that's how you all stay warm in the living units and med tent.
Yeah, well, the medical tent is actually one of the few tents that are heated all 24 hours a day. Some of our other social tents are kept warm too, but that's we sleep. I personally sleep in the Humvee at night. It takes me back to the Northwest Passage trip, and thank you, Zavin.
Yeah, no problem.
And it's also windproof, so that's sort of nice.
And maybe also, Pascal, is the only thing that's actually polar bear proof. Are you the one that's like just being the safest?
Well, and I have my dog in it who loves it. So yeah, we're okay. It's an armored vehicle, and so it's the last bastion that we'll hold against the polar bear.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, listen, we're going to move over to some questions now, and then let you guys bunk down for the night, or the daylight night. But a couple of questions have come up, which of course we're always grateful for, about how does this work get funded, and what can people do to help. And what I will say is the SETI Institute is a nonprofit research and education institution. So all the money that we raise goes into our mission, which is doing research around life in the universe and exploring our universe and understanding it, and also doing education programs and outreach, which of course SETI Live is an example of our public engagement and outreach. So you can make donations to the Institute directly, and I think you can see that we've popped up the website link to do that. If you're interested funding specific activities, we of course, like any nonprofit, we like to have unrestricted gifts because then we can deploy them in the most effective way possible. But some people like to say, well, I want to support education programs, or I'd like to support field expeditions and the kind of work that people like Pascal and his colleagues are doing. So you can direct gifts if you're so inclined, or you can just make donations directly. But much of our work, of course, is funded by government research, where scientists like Pascal and his colleagues write proposals and they submit them to agencies like NASA or the National Science Foundation or the US Department of Energy or others, and they get funded. But much of our work, many of our field expeditions, a lot of the work at Hutton Crater, our SETI research in radio and optical telescopes, some of our expeditions to the Antarctic, Dale Anderson and his colleagues, are all funded by private foundations, private individuals, and the general public, people like you. So thank you for asking that question. And if you do want to support and get involved, you can do that through that link on the website. Let me see, we've got a few questions here. I guess the first and most important one, Pascal, is whether there's been any sightings of Santa while you've been up there.
Yeah, no sightings of Santa. He does live near the North Pole, apparently, but we're still 1,000 miles from the North Pole, so not quite there.
Yeah.
So far, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. Where's another question here? Where am I get permission to republish some of this information, as well as my screen pic of the coral you shared? Rebecca, let's see. Maybe you can, or Beth, if you have information about that, I think it's perfectly okay to share your screen pic on your social media, etc. Things, we didn't get into any details of the spacesuits. Some of the spacesuits are obviously development projects where those are things that we and Collins Aerospace in particular want to keep protected. But I don't think we got into enough details for you to worry about anything on that front. So I think you're okay to share information about this. And of course, this entire discussion with Pascal and this whole session will be on our YouTube channel in the future, so you can share the link for the whole episode. Will NASA set up permanent base to train astronauts? I don't know if you've got comments on that. I mean, obviously NASA does field training with astronauts in different environments, depending on where they're planning to go and so forth. I don't know if they have a permanent installation of that sort, Pascal, or maybe you have some knowledge of that.
The Johnson Space Center, of course, is a permanent installation that trains astronauts. NASA's astronauts returning to the moon are going to be trained in a variety of locations, in particular for geology by the USGS, or in collaboration with the USGS, the United States Geological Survey.
Yep.
So I know that they have plans for field training in the Flagstaff area, which is actually a traditional site where Apollo astronauts were trained as well, and in many other places actually across the globe. The hope is that Hutton Crater will be among the key places where not only astronauts will come train, but also ground personnel, so that mission directors, mission managers have firsthand experience with what it's like to explore a vast tracts of territory using vehicles, which is
Where
the kind of
infrastructure
quite hard to get, and
yeah,
what it's like to wear a spacesuit, for long hours doing that kind of work. Very different from doing cargo bay work or outside the station, that we've been accustomed to in the past 2 or 3 decades. So,
right.
It's an entirely new ball game to start doing surface field operations, surface exploration missions, and we think that this would be a great place to train. I mean, no single place on Earth is going to be sufficient, but this particular spot, I think, would be a very good idea to include in in the agenda for training astronauts going to the moon and Mars.
And Mars, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, obviously you're testing equipment there. Collins is testing spacesuits, honeybees, testing drills and drill bits. You're testing, Humvees and other vehicles. I think you've even done some work around habitat design, et cetera. So, and of course, Houghton has been a facility for a couple of decades now, more than 2 decades functioning. So,
I did not mention this, but beyond being just a large uninhabited island, the main reason we come here is because Devon Island is the single largest piece of real estate that has a climate that this is described as a polar desert. Most Arctic regions that we have access to normally are cold, but they are very wet, like Alaska, like Siberia, like the vast majority of Canada. It's more southern latitudes. This corner of the Arctic is both cold and dry.
Mm-hmm.
And actually relatively rare on Earth. You find that at the summit of mountains. You find that in some places in Antarctica.
Right.
Most of Antarctica is ice covered. Here you have rocky, barren terrain. And then on top of that, on Devon Island, you have a large meteorite impact crater called Hutton Crater. In fact, that's why our project is called the Hutton Mars Project.
Right.
It's 20 kilometers across, 23 million years old. It's so well preserved in the freezer of the Arctic here that if it was smoldering, it would look like it formed yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It's so preserved, and so these are essential ingredients for a Moon and Mars analog. And I mean, if you were to describe Mars or Devon Island, you'd say that it's a place that's rocky, barren, desolate, unvegetated, drenched in ultraviolet light, which we are because of the ozone hole, cratered, which we are because of Hutton Crater.
Yeah.
Describe both Devon Island and Mars in one go.
Yeah, no, it's true, and it's extraordinary. And another place that doesn't have the cold temperatures of an Arctic or Antarctic desert like where you are, but has desert conditions, and that, of course, is the Atacama Desert in Chile. Somebody, Cynthia from Chile, was asking us about that, and of course, as Pascal well knows, Natalie Cabral, who's the director of research at the Carl Sagan Center at the Institute, does a lot of field work in the Atacama. I've been there with her team and, taken some photographs of the Atacama. All you'd have to do is change a little bit the color of the background sky from sort of bluish to pinkish, and you'd be convinced that you're on Mars. It's really quite extraordinary. I think Devon's similar in that way.
It will take visiting all of these places to really be well prepared for the journey to Mars.
Yeah, absolutely. So indeed, in terms of that question that Cynthia asked, we have what is called the Carl Sagan Center for Research. So our research scientists like Pascal and his colleagues come under that organization. In fact, our teams do field expedition work all over the world, in the Arctic, the Antarctic, the Atacama Desert, the volcanoes of the Altiplano in Chile, ice caves in Iceland, where Pascal's also done research, the far reaches of Western Australia, where some of the oldest fossils of life from the very beginnings of life on Earth are located. So field expeditions is a big part of our work, and it does happen all over the globe. And let's see, Jill Buchanan wanted to know why such a long walk to the bathroom, LOL. But I guess, as you said, nice little bit of privacy and, maybe a little bit of a gamble with the polar bears.
A bit of privacy. As it turns out, we used to pitch our personal tents when the project had more participants during the summer. And scaled down a bit just because it was just more manageable, more practical. We get more work done by being a team of about. But at the time, our tent city, where individual participants would pitch their tents, was actually on the opposite side of the bathroom. So the bathroom was at that time centrally located at our camp. Now it turns out that it's sort of a satellite to our main base. But like you said, Bill, it ensures privacy, and it's not bad.
There you go. And so before we let you go, Pascal, just to give everyone an idea, so what's the total population you have up there now? How many folks are with you up at Devon?
Yep. This evening we're 11. We started off with just 8 on the first flight in, and then we had 3 more join us, Brian's team with the drill. We're expecting 4 more over the next 2 days, and we'll basically peak at 14 people at camp until we pull out later this month. And so, it's actually it's a good number. We have enough vehicles for everybody. It makes the whole field campaign very efficient to keep numbers at those levels. Yep.
And I guess the group that's waiting to arrive there is you've got a film crew on the way. Is that right?
Yes, we have a film crew that's doing a short documentary for CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. They're doing a documentary for, I think that's part of a program that's well known in Canada called The Nature of Things. But it's going to be an online documentary, so everybody will be able to view it around the world. And then we also have Evan from NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center is joining us to test some navigation devices and technologies for Artemis. Once you're on the moon, you don't have GPS anymore. You don't have, various other types of navigation systems that we are commonly using here on Earth.
We take for granted. Yeah, absolutely.
And so we have to test out which techniques would be the most reliable and self-reliant for allowing astronauts to figure out where they are in the middle of this landscape on the moon.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, listen, we're going to wrap it up and let you and your team, bunk down for the night or, close up camp and hopefully get some sleep. Thanks for staying in the spacesuit for so long. I'm sure you'll be relieved to get out of that. But great to have you. And it's just a reminder when we see folks there from Collins, from Honeybee, from Sweary, et cetera, this is how science gets done, right? It's a collaborative effort. Science and engineering and space exploration, it takes a village. It takes people from all different kinds of organizations, institutions, not least, of course, NASA as well, doing this kind of work. And so it's great to see this group and this diverse set of folks you have up there, Pascal. And so we wish you all the best and, hope the rest of the mission goes well and people can, get there on their flights in spite of the wildfires in Canada that are affecting a lot of things.
Yeah. Thank you, Bill. We'll keep running the project until you come up and visit.
That's the plan. Exactly. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to bid you guys good night. And on behalf of all of us, behalf of Pascal and his colleagues and fellow researchers and engineers up at Devon Island, on behalf of all of us at the SETI Institute, Rebecca and Beth and Lee and Jasmine and the team in communications, I want to say good night. Thank you for joining us. Do get to know the SETI Institute. If you don't know us already, visit us at SETI.org, learn about our work and learn how you can join in and participate, support our work. You can sign up for our newsletter. We also love to make new friends from all over the world. So do come and get to know us better and be part of our journey, the journey of ultimate discovery. So from California, Mountain View, California, from Devon Island in the Canadian High Arctic, this is Bill Diamond, Pascal Lee saying, so long, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, Pascal, and take care.
Bill, thank you, everybody at SETI. Thank you.